Hello everyone, my name is Dennis from Client and I'm glad to welcome you to this Client University session in which we will cover the life of a project. So together today, we'll go from the creation of the project to the invoice to the customer, including resource assignment, expenses, and timesheet creation and approval. I'll explain some concepts and give you example on how to use client tools and features in order to ease and optimize your daily operation. So without further ado, let's jump in the system. At this very first step, what we need to do is to understand what are the needs, the structure, define our deliverables, and create our project. So the first thing I would do is I would go on Client Project and click on New. I will now start by creating the project itself, so the shell of my structure. I will name this Client Advisory Implementation. Just know that all of these here are some fields included on the project record yet to come, and they can all be edited after the project is created. For the moment, I know the name of my project. I can maybe say that my billing type will be time and expense. Here you go. And my project type will be a customer project. And of course, I want to put it billable. I'm going to save right now. Here we go. Here it is. My project is created. Of course, it's still an empty shell and we need to create the structure itself. The best way to do this is to go on Workspace. When I reach the Workspace, I can see the current layout is with the grid information on the left and a chart on the right hand side. Personally, I really like to work when structuring my project in another view. Client comes up with some different view out of the box. I would like to use the grid view, but on top of this, I already pre-selected the fields I want to have when I'm structuring projects, and I save them as a preset. The preset I'm going to use for this is the estimation. So you see that I have the task name, estimated hours, description, billable, milestone, and milestone payment. So I'm going to create my first task by clicking the plus sign here. And I can already name it, very high level, Discover. It's going to be my first task. Press Enter. If I press Shift Enter, I'm going to create already my new task without needing to use my mouse. So let's create a couple of tasks. So Design, Enter, Shift Enter. And I can already start typing without using my mouse. So Build, I'm going to create Test, and then Train. And my last step would be to deliver. So as you saw, I'm already breaking down the structure of what needs to be done in my project. Then I will also need to create milestones. And for milestones, I like to have them in a separate section. So I'll just make sure it stands out here like this. And instead of Enter, and instead of clicking on Shift Enter, and instead of clicking on Shift Enter, I'm going to click on Control Enter. Now a child task has been created, and I'll do the same thing. So my first milestone is going to be the signature, and then Shift Enter. I'm going to create a new milestone called UAT completed. Then go live, just for the sake of this. I forgot one, so I'm going to add one right next to signature. It's going to be called the initial invoice. And by simply dragging and dropping, I can place it wherever I want in my sequence. So now I see kind of the breakdown of my project. As I'm creating my structure, I could always enter the number of hours for each task exactly in the same sequence as I'm creating the tasks. In this case, I decided to wait after all my tasks were entered, but that could have easily be done exactly in the same process. So here, 5 hours here we go. So I've got all of my tasks. The other thing I could do, still using my keyboard pad and the arrows on it, is to go and put these two milestones. So right now, they are false. I'm going to change it to true. Enter, go down, enter, true, enter, then go down, same thing, right? So easily, I know which one will be milestone to my projects. I know which one will not be milestones. And there might be a payment that I'm aware already that should be invoiced at a specific time. So I'm going to add a payment to this initial invoice because I know the first invoice to be sent out to my customer will be $2,000. So my structure is done. I know that a lot of tasks will need to be completed for this project. People will log their hours on these tasks, and these will be milestones. So once I enter the effort, I might want to update when this effort should take place. In order to do this, I created another preset that I named Timeline. As you can see, the start date, due date, and duration fields from each task have been added as columns on this preset to fasten things up. We are still in the initiation phase, and at this point, we often have an idea of when things should happen. So we can edit the start date or due dates of each of these tasks. Let's start by changing the duration of our first task. Let's put it to 5 days. Automatically, you will see that the system is calculating. However, if I double click on here, you will see that it did not consider the weekends because of our organization work schedule. Now let's move on and change the start date of the design phase and put it to the 21st. Here, and save. You will see right away the task has moved on the right hand side. I am now going to put its duration to 15 days. Just to gain a bit more visibility, I'm going to switch the view to the week view. Now I see the whole task. I can start creating my waterfall by linking the end of one task with the start of the other task, and automatically you'll see the data being updated on the left-hand side as well. In this case, I would like my build task to last 10 days. If you go back to the days view, you can go back and forth and have a lot more granularity on what was planned. Let's stick to the weeks right now and pursue our planning. Actually, I'm going to link my milestones as well so that they are in my project plan. So let's link the signature to the beginning of the project. And to this link, I want to add a lag of 2 days. Save. This should happen at least 2 days before the beginning of my discover task, before I start working on the discover task. But I will also link the beginning of my discover task with my initial invoice, because it is the moment at which I want that amount to be considered an invoice to the customer. So there's no circle back, only a milestone payment will be taken at this specific date. I'll just move on with my waterfall here, like this. Then link the end of my build phase to the testing phase. At the end of the testing phase, I might want to have UAT. And then I will link my UAT with the beginning of the training. However, I'm going to click on that link and change, just add a little 5-day lag. At this point, I only need to link my train with deliver, and at the end, link it to my go live. Probably add another 5-day here. And of course, I'll modify the duration of each to 5 days. I can refresh the page to make sure my information is all set on the workspace. Here, I wanted those days to be considered, so I will move my task and everything will fall in place perfectly. I also want to confirm there is no lag here. No. So my project plan is all set. It looks like a good base to start from. Let's go out of this workspace. You'll see that all of the tasks, all of the works we've done on the other side, on the workspace, is already here, and all of the tasks have been added. Everything is always in sync. When you work in the workspace, it automatically updates all of the information of your project. At this very moment, we're ready to assign resources to our project. However, for the sake of this demonstration, I will push the scenario just a bit further and show you how to assign placeholder resources to the project in order to show you how to reuse this project structure in the future. We will then spin a new project from this project structure and assign actual resources to the project. We'll then move on with the life of our project in Client. Assigning resources is fairly easy from the workspace. Of course, we can use the assignment view, but as we explained earlier, it's always good to have a preset that will bring the columns you're interested in seeing for this. Currently, I have my project structure and no project assignment, no one is assigned to my project. So let's start by right-clicking and adding one. In this case, I will use the P between parentheses to help me easily find my placeholders and select my engagement lead. I will save for the moment. Now I simply added my engagement lead to the project. So I created a project assignment. An easy way to assign these hours to the placeholder would be to add those 5 hours. Here you go, successfully added. Another way to assign people to this would be to multi-select some tasks. So let's select the design by clicking on Control and clicking with our mouse to deliver, test, and design task. I will use this button here, which is allowing me to choosing multiple resources. So I will keep my placeholder engagement lead that is already on my project, but I will also add a solution admin. This automatically added all of my assignment here. What I can do now is just a little refresh. As you can see, the new placeholder has been added and the hours have been equally split between the two resources. You can check the split of hours by clicking on the assignee column. It's going to bring you to the Schedule tab of the right-hand side panel. It's always possible to update or not that information. I'm only going to assign these hours to my solution admin because he's going to be working on this project. And here, the hours for training are going to be given straight to my placeholder trainer. So let's look for the resource. Trainers right here. If I refresh once again, you will see that all the hours have been scheduled to my different placeholders. As I exposed earlier, we could have assigned actual resources to this project and would be up and running. Now, I want to show you how Client makes it easy to reuse that same project structure. I'll show you how to proceed in order to do this. We'll just need to categorize this project as a template, maybe change some fields to better find our project template, and we'd be good to spin a new project. Let's look at this together. Here is our project as we left it. If I want to go back to the standard record page, I click on the arrow. Now on this page, I will want to change a couple of fields that will make this project a template and that will make it easy to find when I'll search for this template. I make sure that the project I will spin from this template will be billable, that the billing type will always be time and expense. At this point, I don't want to determine which rate card it would be, but I could do it. Now, what is more important for me, I want to make sure this project is a customer project type. You can define any project type you want, but this is how we categorize it internally. And as a subtype, same thing, I want to make of this project an initial project. So this is for the categorization. The last option I need to check is the project template and save. By doing so, you made of this project a reusable project structure from which you will be able to create any projects. Let's now go back to our client project list view and select from this list view an already created template list. You will see in this list all of the template I can use, including the one we just created. Just to make sure we have the same naming convention, I will add in the word template so I can edit this straight from this list. Here's my template: initial project, billable, customer facing with time and expense. That's exactly my project. So I'm gonna keep this client advisory implementation template in mind, and I will just create a new project from here. When clicking on this button, you get on a client interface. This interface allows you to see selected fields to accelerate the project creation. In this case, we would name this project Client Advisory Project September. And we will clone using a single project template. In the project template, the Client Advisory Implementation template is going to be available. Just by doing so, I'm going to be, as Roxanne Green, the owner of this project. I can even remove it just so that you can see what it's going to do and save. This is creating my project. It is actually cloning the structure of my template and bringing it to the new project. Here we go, we have our project, and we can now dive in the workspace to start customizing it. At this point, I just want to pause a little bit and step away from our story to think about the templates. Now that we've seen how it works, think about the power of the templates, reusing that same structure over and over again, gaining a lot of time, saving time in your operations, and also improving your delivery each time because you're improving the templates, you're fixing the little issues, you're adjusting the time requested for tasks or for the delivery. So there's a lot of gain in using templates. Let's look at other scenarios you might be interested in too. So in the client project, I just want to bring your attention to the fact that you could use templates for internal projects, such as onboarding or offboarding of employees. That could be a very, very interesting use case to look for. Here you could see a sequence of tasks that need to be done when you are onboarding a new employee, right? So this is kind of an idea I wanted to bring to your attention. Now that we've looked at how a project is working and a project template is working as well, I want to bring your attention to the proposal object from client. Once again, we're not in our sequence anymore. We're just looking at something that could be very useful, especially in the sales cycle. So a proposal is going to be that bridge we're looking for between opportunity and the operation team. So you could spin a project that is not yet started. For example, a pipeline project. And this project could include its own structure of work to be delivered to a customer, and it could be created from a template that already exists in your org. So anyone from sales could easily create a project from an existing project template and then have all of the details included as proposal line and maybe create an SOW or a quote to be signed by the customer. That project could remain at the pipeline project status up until things are confirmed, and change the status to get its operation team ready to work on that new project. There's a possibility to have a bi-directional sync between a related pipeline project that you would have created and you're working on for your statement of work. So you could pull information from your project on that proposal, or the other way, you could push the information from the proposal straight to the project, including your expected revenue, budgeted costs or margin, etc. So it becomes very interesting to think about use cases in which you would benefit in using the project templates. Let's move on with our story. So we're back on our project, and as a PM, I assign my resources and I'm mostly ready to start. I just had an alignment meeting with my customer and I need to modify the timeline just a little bit. So let's go to the workspace. I know that the signature will take place later. So instead of being on the 19th, I'll put it on the 27th and save. I see that all my waterfall is going to follow the change I just made. I also have been informed that we are estimating way more hours in the discovery phase and that this should last at least for 2 weeks because we want to make sure we'll have enough time. In the middle, I'll remove the lag because I know at the end of the discovery phase, I'll be able to start designing. However, I will need to create an additional task at the end. So I'll just click on the plus sign here and just create a new milestone that I will call Designed Approved. I was working on my timeline view, but I know that milestone related fields appear on my estimation preset. So instead of changing my preset, I can just go to this preset and change the field. It's going to be false. So it's a milestone that is not billable. Here you go. And this milestone will need to be in the milestone section. Here you go. Now I can go back to my management preset and you'll see the icon has changed. Now what I want to do is make sure that this will happen after the design phase. So I'm going to delete this link and create a new link, as I now want the design to be approved and it's a gate. So since the Gantt is a communication tool, all my gates are very important. In order to be completed, I need to modify that milestone and add some checklist items. I want to make sure that the mapping has been sent to the customer. And I'll press enter. And also I want to, here you go. And also I want mapping signed by the customer. My checklists are created. I will now exit. I am also expecting more hours for the training session because there are going to be more employee on their side. And I'll make sure that these hours are scheduled. So Jenny Red is going to iterate of this hours. I'm comfortable with the project structure as it is now. I can now show you what will be the user experience when they will modify the task, enter their time, and log some expenses. Let's look at this. There's a lot I want to show you now related to task completion and timesheet entries. And we're going to do a bit of time traveling as well as role playing. So we'll change data based on the person we're embodying and also the time at which this happened. So let's start by, we are still Roxanne Green here, and we're looking at all of the project. Currently, there's 55 items available. We'll look at our client advisory project because this is the project we're managing, remember? as a project assignment, still Roxanne Green is the engagement lead. You see that the data has started to change. Of course, as I'm saying, the start date should be September 27th, but since this start date is ahead in time, I changed project status to in progress. This makes the project available for time entry for any resources logged on this project. This is an important detail for you to remember, and often a question our customers are asking why they are not seeing their project in their My Timesheets. So if we go down in the time and effort section, you will see that some data has already been entered. Here, you've got some billable hours logged, no billable hours available here because there's nothing that has been approved, right? So in the revenue and cost, there's already numbers and data that started to come in. So we have a billable amount logged as of now. What is the amount for the hours entered based on the rate of each resources? So all of this data is going to be always available at the bottom of your project and updated each time people are logging timesheets and timesheets are being approved. Now that we're aware of these details, we'll go just in the workspace to look at the state of the project as it is. So you see, as I said, there are a couple of hours that have been logged, but now for the sake of this demo, I will just update a bit some other data, and I wanted to show it to you live. So for example, I'll show you two ways to edit a milestone from the workspace. Since milestones are only one-day tasks, what you could do is go and use the green pen and just update the task status to complete it once it's done and save. And this would consider this milestone automatically if there's a milestone payment associated to it. So if you remember from our estimation, and I just want to show you where we're from, our other milestone at the beginning was related to the initial invoice. So I'm going to put this milestone to billable, and this will make that $2,000 available for the invoicing. So I only went in the estimation preset to show you where we were and why I'm going to change the status of this milestone. And I'm going to do it differently. So of course, so I could have the task status available straight on my preset. And if it's not the case, as I said earlier, use the green pen or go on the default record standard view and change the status from this view here, or by putting it to 100%. Change the status, change the percentage complete, or check that checkbox that will make the task as complete. So any of them is going to update the other. So because I checked, the task is completed and the percent complete is at 100%. But remember, we're working on a milestone and it's only a one-day event that I completed for the sake of this demo. The last option I want to show you is related to task checklists. On the Design Approve milestone, we added checklist items. These checklist items could become very handy when you track steps that needs to be done on a task or on a milestone, but that you don't necessarily require time to be entered against. Let me go back on the task itself and look at the data of this task. You see it's now 50% complete, and the reason why is because we have that option checked in, the enable task completion from checklist. So this is a very interesting option to have checked if you want to track a task completion related to the checklist items of this task. Let's go back on the project. So you see the data has been also updated on the workspace, and it's always going to be this way. When people are working on the project, either it's the project manager or the resources, all of the data will be aggregated on the project. Now, still as Roxanne Green, we're going to go and look at the My Timesheet. This is the interface of My Timesheet. At the top, you have a section that summarizes the information that will be entered below. In this case, what I will start to do is go back 1 week. For Roxanne Green's timesheet, you see that there are projects for which we already logged time, and that time has been approved. So this is the timesheet of our previous week. Only 3 hours have been entered on a total of 40 hours, which gives 7.5% utilization, etc., etc. Of course, it's only data for this demo. The reason why I'm going back and forth is that one of the options of my timesheet that I could do as Roxanne is, because I'm working on all of these projects over and over again, I can copy from previous week, which would bring back the lines on which I entered time the previous week. So for the Acme 4 project, on this specific task, I could start logging time for this week. So this is an option people are sometimes doing at the beginning of their week, just to bring back the information and start logging time on their Monday. So that's one option. The other option I can show you, if I reload and refresh this timesheet without any changes, you see we're now back with a clean and empty timesheet. I can copy from schedule. So when you are copying from schedule, it will bring the work you're expected to do this week because you were scheduled on it. So you see the scheduled hours, what has been billed already, and what's the variance. You see that all of these tasks, they are billable. And from this set of data, I can already start changing and editing what's going to happen this week. So I could, for example, delete a line because I know I will not work on this for the given week. Then start entering hours for my week. So as soon as I save, the data and the lines are being saved on this timesheet. And when I will go back, they will be considered. It's my canvas for the week. I may have only entered five hours on this project, on this task, but when Roxanne's going to go back on his timesheet, she's going to see all of these lines available for time entry up until the timesheet is submitted. Keeping our project and our story in mind, I'm just going to show you another option. So in the project assignment, you remember that Shannon is also assigned to this project. So what Shannon could do is use the resource planner to see what she has to do this week, because we're still in the context where we want to understand what data we need to work on. This is the global resource planner on which you see all of the resources and their assignment. Because we want to focus on Shannon, we could apply the filter and only see what she's scheduled. If you expand, you will see not only the time off, always available at the top, but also the 2 projects for which she has a project assignment. And if I expand a bit more, the time schedule on each tasks for which she can log time. So let's go on the build task. You see that I prepared a little something already. So on the log time, it's an option for you to log your time and to change your time entries. So without going to the My Timesheet interface, a user could straight do some time entry using the meter at the top. So if I stop here, the hours already were included here, and I can add a note, test comments, and save. This will keep the time entry in my Timesheet. If I refresh the page and go back to this widget, you see that the project and the task are pre-entered. So I can now enter more hours for a different day with same comments and save. So it's an easy way to do some time entry as well. There's one last option I wanted to show you. Now I logged as Jenny Red here, and you notice that this user prefers to use the Client tab app. She might also have another preference, which is to start the timer as she logs in because she knows what she works on. So she can go to the global action at the top and a quick time entry is available. On this interface, you have the possibility to start the meter and specify what project, which task, which will automatically update the billable checkbox, or manually enter the number of hours and the date and save. That's a very quick way to log your time, and all users have access to this global action from any point. Another possibility would be that if she knows which project she's working on and she has to log time against, maybe she goes to her list of all projects. In this case, you see she has less records because we're only seeing projects she has access to, and she could start choosing the task by going to the Kanban view and filter down using My Task so that she can clearly see which tasks are ongoing and what she needs to take action on. That same Kanban option is available from the app launcher if you select Kanban board. So this option brings you out of the project context. It could be pretty useful when a user have tasks on less project or when their work is well scheduled in advance. So you could use that same filter, and then you would see all the tasks assigned to her from different projects. So as you've seen, there are many ways for a user to understand the work that they need to do and ways to log their time. So now let's move on with the time approval. We're now back on Roxanne Green admin user, and I want to show you how easy it is to approve time entries. So we rely on Salesforce standard approval mechanism, and this can support many different approval options. Usually, most of the time for time entry, we rely on a very simple approval process, and we will use the project owner as approver. In this case, since we're Roxanne Green, we'll go on Timesheet Approval interface. This is a client interface allowing you to search for time card to approve. So you have a range of date. Let's push the envelope a bit and put it all the way up to December. I will not specify any resource for the moment. No account, no project owner. I'm Roxanne, so I'm going to look for my approval and I'm going to try to push to 20. So I'm looking for anything that has been submitted for approval. Okay, interesting. I see that Jenny Red has submitted hours on different projects. And same thing for Shannon, which makes sense because these are two users that are working on my client advisory project September, which I'm looking for. If I know and I see which one I need to approve, I can select only one user, which is going to select all of the time card. I can maybe select just one of the time card because I want to take action on this one, or I can select two users, which will include them all, or maybe if I'm comfortable with all of them, it allows me to approve many timesheets at the same time. You select your approval status and you submit. Here you go, all of the time entries have been approved automatically. The timesheet approval can also be very useful when you're trying to find records that could have been submitted or already approved, depending on the approval status. So for example, I could go back and look for stuff that has been approved, and I will see what I just approved. On each line, there is an option to see the data and also to go back and look at the comments you have on the timesheets and the record itself of the timesheet. So what project, which task, and what it looks like on the timesheet itself. At this point, our project is still in progress. Some work has been done and we saw that time has been logged and approved on our project. Let's just take a look at some feature and metrics on our project record. First, I can see that time-related report have been automatically updated. I see, for instance, that up to now, we are still on target as we did not exceed time logged versus time we initially estimated on any tasks. Moreover, I also see that all resources taking part to the project per role are still active and did not complete their implication as there are still hours for them to log. On the other side, I have 7.14% complete. My completion method is based on task completion. I could have also set it to hours incurred or only milestone completed so far. But that 7.14% in this case means that I have 7.14% of my tasks completed.
In the time and effort section, data is being collected as time is being entered. Example, I approved 10 billable hours so far, but 16.76 have been logged. Actual hours are approved non-billable and billable hours. So it's the actual time spent on my project. If I move to the revenue and cost section, we've got, for example, billable amount versus billable amount log. Still similar concept here. The first one will be for approved hours and the other one will be considering all logged hours. The margin log would be all the revenue from the time logged minus all resources, costs, and expenses. And the margin is negative here as we have not invoiced yet. So let's take a quick look at the creation of expense prior jumping in the invoice generation. Logging expenses in Client is fairly easy. Once you're on your project, you can go to Expenses. This would show you a list of all expense report existing per resource on your project. So if I take one step back, each of these expense report will have expense lines, so all of the detail of your expenses in this object. Let's start by creating one for this project. Just click on New and we'll create an expense report for Jenny Red. At this point, maybe we want to track a business trip to LA. Sounds great, isn't it? And then the project owner would be Roxanne in this case here. And I don't want to include anything on the approval status because this field would not be editable. I just see it editable because I'm an admin. So at this point, there's no edition of this field at all. And these would be exclusively used if you have a relationship with an accounting system. So if I click on Save, my expense report has been created. It's all empty. There's no expense line yet. And we see that it's for project resource Jenny Red on my client advisory project September. And the description for this is the business trip to LA. So here's how I would add an expense line. I would simply click on Add Expense Line. And from this interface, I would choose the expense type that are recognized by my organization. In this case, let's create one for lodging and let's pretend that it was $75. Now, here you've got default values that come from the expense type. So by default, in my organization, the way it is set up, all of the lodging expenses would be billable and reimbursable by default. I could uncheck this when I create it. It's just default, it's not mandatory. The last option that is possible is to attach an expense. In this case, I could click on Attach Expense and select pre-uploaded files that are already in my Salesforce org, or choose to upload a new file from my computer. In this example, I'll just take a logo and close this. So you see it's been attached. The reason why I'm attaching here is because I know that for lodging expenses, there is an attach expense required. If I save, you will see that the expense line will be created and that my expense report would be instantly updated. Here you go. You see that now my expense report is at $75. So it's going to be cumulative on my expense report. At any point, I could add other expenses for this business trip. So for example, meals, I'll put $50. In this case, let's just try if I don't attach any expense. See, there is this message that will always be prompt if the expense receipt are required on the expense type. So let's just do it for the sake of this example. Close and save. Here you go. Total has been adjusted. I've got my two expenses, and the last step for this expense will be for the user to submit for approval. As long as your approval process is well configured in the backend. Note that there will not be any special interface for the expense approval. It will just be a notification that you set up either on the Salesforce notification here or by email that you receive, and the approver will need to approve the record as for any other Salesforce record when a standard approval process is set. In Client, all invoices are created using the invoice generation tool, creatively named Generate Invoices. This tool is a search engine that will look for time, fixed fee, and expense items to be invoiced. You can narrow down your search and create, for example, invoices per project or per account. Let's leave it for per project for now. We'll select a very wide set of dates, so between the beginning of August to the end of October. And then you could narrow down depending on if you're looking for time and expense project, installment, recurring. Those are your billing methods that you can select from. So we'll leave it to all for now. And you can select to see not approved or approved only items, which is the case now. So let's search. We see that our project has come out with $2,000 as fixed fee, which comes from our billable milestone. We've got 4 hours that were billable in this example for a total of $650. And we had an expense of $125. So these would be the considered amount on the invoice we'd like to generate. The last option here will be used only if you have many organizations. In our case, we only have Brainstorm Box. So Brainstorm Box is providing the work. Let's take a look at what our invoice will look like. Let's create an invoice. Our invoice for the client advisory project has been created for this set of dates, and it's named Invoice 19. Let's look at it now. As I explained earlier, on the generated invoice, you will find information related to time entry, to expense items that have been submitted, and to your fixed fee. So in this case, we had our milestone initial invoice with its related $2,000 amount. We have 2 expense items that were created on our expense report for Jenny Red. And we have all of the line items for the time. All of these items give us a total of $3,024.75 for this invoice. So in this section, you will find information about the invoice. A lot of fields are pre-populated using the information that you configured on your organization. Sales taxes information will also come from your organization information, but is always editable if you want to change them when generating the invoice. The accounting section is dedicated to modify the information or to validate the information if ever you are syncing this invoice to your accounting system. The financial information is a summary and roll up of all of the related items we looked a bit earlier. And everything related to the invoice formatting is coming, once again, by default from your organization, but can be editable. So for example, if I'm modifying any of these options, the PDF to be generated will be modified as well. Payment information comes from my organization. Same thing with the footer. So let's take a look at what the PDF looks like. The PDF is a very simple document that is generated, including the information from your invoice. As you can see, we've got detail of the time entry per resources, the description of each line items, so the expense, the initial invoice milestone amount, and all of the service hours. At the bottom, you have the information that comes from your organization. Here, because I asked for it, in the formatting of my PDF, I've got information. I will find the details of the time entry with the notes that we added. Same thing with the expenses. Now, just for the sake of this demo, I will show you what the PDF will look like if I change the formatting options. And for example, include the expenses so that we see all of the receipt on the PDF. However, I will only consider one of the expenses as I don't want to include this one as part of my invoice. It's not included anymore. Let's preview the PDF. You see that the PDF generated comes up with a different layout, adding an extra page for expense receipts and keeping the information as I had earlier. There is also a very interesting tool to look at, which is the Invoice Workspace. The Invoice Workspace allows you to mass edit information you want to include in your invoice or to write off from your invoice. For example, I can select all of the time entry here and write off these lines. You will see that all of these items will now be written off from the invoice and these amounts will be deprecated. As we saw earlier on the invoice itself, I could have decided to select all of them and uninclude the lines. So let's go back on our invoice and refresh the page to see the new data. So we still have our invoice line items, and you see that the invoice total has changed. But if I scroll down, for each of the time entry, a write-off line has been created with the amount deprecated. So the Invoice Workspace makes it very easy to manage write-offs or to exclude items from your invoice. Just a quick note, excluding an item from an invoice will make it available again for you to generate a new invoice including this item. The last feature I'd like to expose is the payment. So if you're using an invoicing tool such as Xero or QuickBooks, you can get the payments and these would automatically update your balance and create a payment record. You could also create a new payment record manually by just clicking the new button and filling the information. The full amount comes by default. I could maybe select only to put a payment of $1,000 with the date at which I received the payment and save. You will see that my payment record is now existing. And if I go back on my invoice, it appears in the related list. And this amount will also be considered in the balance to be paid by the customer. I hope this series of video helped you understand the life of a project in Client PSA. Now, I'd like you to remember the followings. The project structure needs to be clear and well-defined. You need to come up with clear deliverables for your users so that your users will know what kind of effort and time they need to invest on each of the tasks you will create. Then if you think that this project structure is to be reused in the future, think about templatization. Think about project templates, task template, and these combined with placeholders. This will translate in a lot of time saved. So time saving, but also optimization. You're going to optimize and refine your project templates each time you spin a new project using these templates. My other point is just take time to familiarize with the tool. There's so much in Client PSA tool, and each users will benefit from using some tools or to use the Client PSA in different ways. Either if you are a PM or a user, it would mean focusing on different areas, and you will be the one transferring that knowledge. So take time to familiarize with each of the tools in the Client PSA. And then just see for yourself how your business will benefit from that, how it's going to grow using the tools properly. See you on next class.